AAA Live, where your academic goals are advanced and achieved. This is attorney Amian April M. Alcazar, and I'm welcoming you to our program every Wednesdays from 7 to 8 in the evening. So you can like, follow, and subscribe to us at our Facebook and YouTube channels. So for tonight's guest, we have Miss Annalisa Reyes Saro, who's based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada right now. And we're going to be talking about the field of mass communications and what eventually she undertook as her field of study and her career trajectory. So can you please give some greetings to our viewers, Miss Anna?
Hi, hello everybody. Thanks for having me on your show, April.
Yes, thank you so much for giving us valuable time, and we're so happy to have you with us. And later, I'm sure it will be so interesting for them to hear about your career trajectory. So, but let's start, I think, from the very beginning as to when and how, if you can recall, did you actually have an interest as a young person in the field of study that you eventually took, and why do you think you had this interest?
Wow. Going back to 19 yes. Forgotten.
We can recall, okay, so,
yes. So it was in the 80s, actually. I mean, I went to high school with you, so this would have been mid-80s. Yes. I loved listening to the radio. I would recall listening to Casey Kasem on America's Top 40, and I loved listening to his show, and I would be thinking, like, I could do that. That's such a fun job. You know, you just play music and you give interesting snippets about the artists and the songs. So that definitely, I think that's where it started. But I have to be honest, I didn't really think I would go into radio. It was just like an interest of mine. I thought, you know, that I want to go into journalism because as a youngster or as a teenager, I thought that was where my strengths, you know, were, because I was actually educated overseas. So coming back to the Philippines for high school, I found that it was easier for me to write in English, speak in English. So I thought that, well, I can definitely draw on my strengths. So I was thinking I'd go into journalism.
Okay. And so did it inform you insofar as your decision for the field of study in mass communications was concerned?
Yes. So, well, in high school, so I was around 16 when I graduated high school. So unlike others who were like, I want to be a lawyer or a doctor from an earlier age, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to go into. So, but like I said, I found that I had a talent and, you know, an aptitude for writing. So I was thinking, okay, when I take the UPCAT, I'll just put down journalism, because you have to put down college that you're going to enter into. So that's what I put down, was like mass communication journalism.
Okay, so you were talking about your experiential learnings and your interests, right? So what do you think were like the skills and proficiencies that you had already initially and then you eventually developed so that you went into your field of study?
Okay, so I love to read. Definitely my parents taught me how to read at an early age. By age 3, I was reading. So I love reading fiction and nonfiction. And so that, I think, helps you build an imagination and reading different types of genres, and that teaches you how to write. So that will definitely help you, because when you go into mass communications, whether you're in performing, writing, or production, writing skills are necessary.
Okay. And then in terms of like the experiential learning, because you mentioned about like listening to the radio and actually loving it. So how did that actually put into play these considerations of your career trajectory eventually?
Well, you know, as a fan, a radio fan, I would get to know DJs. I'd call them up, you know, it'd be a hard time getting, you know, you call radio stations and then you'd request a song, and pretty soon you start getting to know some of the radio personalities. And even though they're busy, you know, sometimes they can't really talk to you for a long time on the phone. But me, you know, like I would go with a friend to visit radio stations. And that's where you get to know them. Yeah. Well, I mean,
was this even just in college still? This was even in college when you were in college?
Yes. Actually, this is more actually when I was in college because I was more independent.
Of
When we were in
course.
high school,
Yes.
we would be driven to school and picked up after school. But going to
Yes.
UP, I had free
Yes.
time. So I
Yes.
would visit the nearest radio station, which was, I think, like in Capitol Hills, like
Yes.
Channel 13. It was, and then the radio station was KB 89.1.
You
So
really
that's,
remember all of
yeah,
this.
well, that's because, you start meeting people and
Uh-huh.
you ask questions. So those were some of the experiences. And then getting to know how a radio station works, it kind of
Mhm.
sparked more of an interest. And
Yes.
so that's why when I was in university, even though I had initially put in journalism as my major,
Uh-huh.
but it didn't really count because, as you know, first year college, you're
It's
not
just
really
general
picking any majors.
education.
Yeah, general subjects first. And you're
Uh-huh.
actually put with a bunch of other students from your college, but not necessarily in your major. So
Yes.
even though my blockmates were mostly journalism students, some of them were broadcast students. So I got to talk to them, and
Uh-huh.
the friendships that you cultivate, and it's kind of in a way meeting friends, and then they kind of influence me to go, hey, you know what, broadcasting sounds more exciting than journalism. And they were actually the ones who kind of encouraged me or invited me to go with them to the radio stations. So
Uh-huh.
that actually made me change my mind about which major I wanted to
So did
pursue.
you actually shift majors then from journalism to
Yes.
broadcast?
So second year college is when you kind of have an interview with the college, right?
Yes. Mhm.
And then they make you pick your major, because based on that is when they start assigning you what subjects to take. So
Exactly.
yes, at that time I said that I would pursue broadcasting instead of journalism.
Uh-huh. Okay. And so all throughout like university, what were these experiential learnings that you had that really were preparatory to your eventual career trajectory, at least immediately after college that was?
Okay, so definitely, like, once I've decided to pursue broadcasting, so the um, courses that they assign you are like introduction to broadcasting, radio and TV production, and script writing and performance. So, and all the while also, I was visiting radio stations and getting to know people. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, by that time, one of my um, classmates was already working as a DJ in a radio station. And
I
she was
see.
actually the one who got me to um, audition for a job in a radio station.
When you
So
were
again,
still in college?
yes, in my final year in college, her name was Mickey. She was actually a DJ with, I think, with Kiss. And then
Uh-huh.
she shifted to Radio Romance 101.9, because Radio Romance was being
Mhm.
rebranded. It was an existing station, but
Yes.
they were changing the format so that it would be an all-female lineup. So all the DJs and all the newscasters were going to be women, which was
Yes.
unheard of at the time, because
Yes.
at that time in the 80s, all the major, or like the DJs, were guys. So
Yes.
women were just limited to either the sidekick, or
Yes. Usually.
or the newscasters. So
Yes.
when Radio Romance 101.9 was launched, it was groundbreaking, because it was being marketed as all female, young, pretty,
Yes.
single women in their 20s who would love to
Yes.
talk to you. So I mean, I guess in a way that wouldn't fly during this time, this
And
day and
the
age.
target audience obviously were supposed to be like young women of that particular station.
Well, yes, and also, like, they were also marketing us toward the guys, because it's like,
Mhm.
ooh, like, like, even like the marketing, it was like we'd have pictorials, and so
Yes.
so yeah, it would be because we played romance music. Of course, Filipinos love songs. You want to have a hit song in the
Romantic
Philippines?
songs.
Yes, you either make them dance, or you make them cry. So so radio romance just by itself. So the the target would always be like, yes, anyone who loves love songs, but
Yes.
because the all the personnel were, young women. So,
Yes.
it's probably secondary that, oh, yes, young women would also look up to us and say, hey, that's like groundbreaking, like, that's something I can aspire to. But it's also, targeted toward the guys.
Yes, exactly. So after you graduated, so obviously you started working already, right? But at the very least, you still graduated from your broadcast course. So was it really a natural progression to just continue now? And did you start with Radio Romance?
Yes, that was my very first job. And actually, it was a bit of luck and also a ballsy chance I took, because
Yes.
when they were filling out their lineup, they had a spot for an afternoon newscaster that wasn't filled yet. And
Okay.
Mickey, she was a DJ there already, and she was my classmate. She said, go and audition. So I
Yes.
did. And I
Mhm.
didn't hear back because the station manager or the head of the radio, he was out of the country at the time. It was March, so it was summer vacation.
Okay.
So, and I auditioned and I hadn't heard back.
Okay.
So they were saying, well, what, come on, like, what's happening? And I said, well, I hadn't heard back. But they
Yes.
actually said, just come on in and do the news. So for 2 weeks, I was actually doing the news in the afternoons from 2:30 until 7:30 in the evening. And I wasn't an employee of ABS-CBN. I was just going in for 2 weeks and doing it. And then
Yes.
when LBJ, his Joselito
Yes.
Balquedra Jr.,
Yes.
he came back from the States and he
Yes.
heard me on the radio in his car and he said, who the heck is that? So he
Yes.
comes to the station, and so he was
Who is
asking
that?
everybody there, like, who's that person doing the news? And then they said, well, Anna's been doing the news for like 2 weeks. So then he said, okay. And then he hired me. But that's what I mean, like, take a chance.
Yes, exactly. So based on that particular first entry position, so how did you progress insofar as Radio Romance or even this broadcast in radio work was concerned?
Okay, so I was doing the news for a year, but then I
Mhm.
actually left because I left the Philippines for a little over a year. I had finished university and I had wanted to travel. So
Okay.
I spent a year and a little bit traveling the US and Canada. And then when
Mhm.
I came back, I visited the radio station again because they were my friends and just for old time's sake. And then I
Yes.
kind of joked, I go, do you have a position? Because I was
Yes.
back in the Philippines. I did have a job. So I said, do you
Yes.
have an opening? And they said, yes, come on
Yes.
back. So I started as a DJ in
Mhm.
the night shift. That was
Okay.
which I had for years. It was called
Mhm.
Night Moods
Okay.
from 9 o'clock and in the evening until 1 p.m.
1
So
a.m. or
yeah,
1
1 a.m.
9
So
p.m. to
9 in
1
the evening
a.m.
until 1 in the morning. So
Wow, okay. That's the night shift.
yeah, that is the night shift. And
Uh-huh.
I did that for several years. And eventually they shifted me to the morning show, which is
Mm-hmm.
5 in the morning until 9 in the morning.
Mm-hmm. And what was the difference between the night shift and the morning show?
Okay, so well, if you think about it, when you listen to the radio, okay, so
Mm-hmm.
you want to put people to sleep or get them to relax. So the
Yes.
music is slower and more sultry. And of
Uh,
course, there's less commercials going on, right?
yes.
So the
Mm-hmm.
morning shift, by contrast, is you have to get people ready to go to work. They're at
Yeah.
work, and you have to keep them awake. And because it's the morning show is actually the busiest time.
Uh-huh.
It's one of the high traffic times on radio, so it's got the most commercials. So that's a
Mhm.
lot more hectic.
Yes.
You're juggling so many things. You're doing making sure that you play the right commercials at the right time, and you're logging down the start time and then the end time of each commercial, and then you're
Uh,
looking at your playlist and you're making sure that you've got your next songs queued, and you have to think of what am I going to say next, and then you
yes.
have to look at so it's a very, very different dynamic, of course, when
Okay.
you're doing
So,
the
and
morning show.
both sides of it, you've been able to experience it.
Yes.
So, what kind of advice would you actually give to young people if they had such an interest in your field, which is like broadcasting and your experience in terms of like radio broadcasting?
Okay, so well, just some of the skills seriously cultivate social skills,
Yes.
because a lot of the jobs are word of mouth. I mean, just
Uh-huh.
by example, I heard about this position because of a friend. And
Yes.
even other, when I would freelance as voiceover talent for commercials, they're not posted anywhere online. It's just word of mouth. Somebody will
Uh-huh.
say, friend of a friend says like such and such ad agency is doing a campaign for this product. And
Mhm.
so why don't you audition? So and so is a production manager for this batch of commercials. So yeah, it's word of mouth. So social skills definitely cultivate your interpersonal relationships, not only
Okay.
because your contacts, but
Yes.
because you could find a kindred spirit who's going to be your friend after decades, and regardless of time and space,
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
friends.
Yes.
um, and and I would say, I don't know if voice quality is that important anymore,
Mhm.
because when I started, I had a definite edge because I spoke straight English, and with an American accent, because this was the 80s, right?
Yes.
And
Mhm.
everybody wanted to sound like, they came from the States.
Yes.
um, so afterwards, in the 90s, there was a shift toward more Taglish. There was
Yes.
more pride in like OPM.
Yes.
So I don't know, necessarily think that your vocal quality is that important anymore.
Mhm.
Um,
But
but
wouldn't you say that it's more about the fluency? It's
yes.
not a matter of the enunciation or the pronunciation, but it's more about your fluency or familiarity
Mhm.
or comfort level
Exactly.
in the language and its use.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes, definitely. And also because you'll be interacting with people on the air. So
Mhm.
finding that, you know, like I said, the social skills. So being able to hold a conversation, because I would hold interviews with
Yes.
on-air personalities, or
Mhm.
I would have to go on on television to help promote things for radio, like such as a time when we had the radio romance movie. So I
Yes.
would have to be interviewed on TV. And so yeah, just being able to articulate yourself, which I'm not doing very well right now. and and yeah, so I think that's one of the things that would help. Also, like,
Yes.
just keep reading and writing, because you don't have
Mhm.
to know everything, but just be able to ask the right questions, so
Yes.
that this will help you like converse with other people when you're actually interviewing them or being interviewed by them. So
Mhm. Yeah, but
um,
in addition, of course, as you said about the field of study, you would have like your technical competencies. Definitely, that could be informed by the actual field of broadcasting studies, and at the same time, developing like your personal qualities. You've mentioned about like the ability to articulate your thoughts, and of course, having these interpersonal skills, and all of these skills and proficiencies that you've developed. When you do have a career, it may not necessarily be continuous in the sense of that will be your eventual career from the time you begin entry level until the time that you will retire or finish your work. So eventually life happens, correct, Anna? And so you make some decisions that will lead you to some other possible field. So how did these skills that you've developed in broadcasting eventually help you transfer some of these skills to an eventual career that you undertook? And what was this particular career?
okay, so just kind of starting, it's a good thing to have a natural curiosity. So just because you're a DJ or a newscaster, it's like, oh, that's my role.
Yes.
Things change very quickly. You don't know if your radio station is going to be reformatted. It's like,
Yes.
for example, Radio Romance decided they
Oh,
were going to
yeah.
focus less on the romance and play more pop songs. And
Okay.
eventually, half the women left. They started hiring more men, and
Yes.
the format changed.
Yes.
So being able to adapt, just like in life, really.
Yes.
You have to be able to roll with the changes and adapt, right?
Yes.
And that natural curiosity, ask questions when you meet other people, like in different fields, because you
Yes.
never know what might spin you or what you might find interesting. For
Mm-hmm.
example, a few of the ladies who were in radio, who
Mm-hmm.
were DJs, they decided to go into sales.
Yes.
So and even there are examples of people who weren't on air. Like some of the friends I've made, they were kind of volunteers with Double R. So
Mm-hmm.
they would come in. They were our fans, and they became friends. So they
Mm-hmm.
would volunteer at Double R events, and eventually they caught the attention of higher ups in ABS-CBN, and they were hired. So
Mm-hmm.
um, one of them, she's still with ABS-CBN, even though they've lost their franchise.
Yes.
Yeah, so like I said, your natural curiosity to learn and to volunteer, even though you're not getting paid for something, so you get your foot in the door, and
Mm-hmm.
then catch the attention of somebody who's in a position to give you an opportunity.
Okay.
Uh,
Yes.
yes. So
So you think that's what
and
happened eventually, like to you, when you did make certain life decisions that gave you a different trajectory in your work and your career eventually?
yeah, so actually, like from radio, I was still with ABS-CBN. They when they launched Sky Cable, for
Mm-hmm.
example. So
Yes.
and
I
Studio 23, I
yes.
left. I was the voiceover announcer for Sky Cable, and then Studio 23. I was kind of phased out of Sky Cable because they wanted more like a guy to do more of the announcing, because they were
Okay.
focusing more on sports. So I then went to Studio 23 because they had more of the children's shows and
Yes.
like the lifestyle shows.
Lifestyle. Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
then when I decided to leave the Philippines, so now
Mm-hmm.
I was going to be an immigrant.
Yes.
Um, and as you know, when you're a new immigrant, you can't be picky. You can't just say, well, I was this is kind of work I did back home. So my
Exactly.
first job in Canada as an immigrant was actually by luck. My cousin,
Mm-hmm.
um, she heard, she was listening to the radio
Yes.
coincidentally, and heard that the DJs there saying, our receptionist is leaving us. If you know
Yes.
somebody who you think would be great working for a radio station, tell them to
Yes.
submit their resume. So as a new immigrant, I had
Yes.
only been in Toronto for like a month or so. I was
Yes.
hired as a receptionist for a radio station. And because
Mm-hmm.
I had a background in
Radio.
radio, they were
Yes.
hoping that, okay, after a while, if you're interested, we can transition you to another position within the firm.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Whether, because part of being a radio personality, where you're selling,
Yes.
you're not just playing and talking, you're
Yes.
selling the brand, you're selling a
Yes.
station. So
Exactly.
they were saying, hey, you go into marketing or something like
Yeah.
that. And
Okay.
but as a receptionist, because I've been dealing with the public, even though as a DJ, I'm behind, you can't really see me. But
Yes.
that helped, definitely, being the
Definitely.
front person
Yes,
for
for
the
the
radio.
radio, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. And
So I did
so
that
from
for a
there
while.
on, so from that position, then all of these skills that you've developed all through that time, where did you eventually have your career, and how did you use all of these skills that were first developed and honed in broadcasting?
Okay, so right now I am a corporate paralegal.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been a corporate paralegal for more than 15 years now. And that actually happened again by luck,
Mm-hmm.
or
Like
serendipity. Let's
very
just call it.
lucky.
Yeah, well, I would say serendipity because, like I said, being at the right place at the right time, and then just grabbing the opportunity, being able to recognize the opportunity for what it
And
is.
it's
But
there, yes. Mm-hmm.
yes, opportunity is always dressed up to look like work. But so
Yes.
don't be afraid to grab that opportunity.
Yes.
So
Uh-huh.
I had moved to Calgary, and I decided that, hey, I have no office skills to speak of. This was in the early 2000s, and
Mm-hmm.
being in radio, it was the internet had exploded finally, late 90s, and I had never used a computer for work before. So I decided to go to a community college to learn some office skills, because I thought that whatever work I would do in the future, no matter what, would require me to have office skills. So I did that. And my first job after that was as an administrative assistant in a law firm. And so again, like, don't be afraid of work. It's just work. And but and I said, like, accept the work and volunteer. You never know who's paying attention. So
initiative is key.
Yes. And like I said, like, that's not my job. See, that's one thing I hate the most is people who say, you're not paying me to do that, or that's not my job. Because you never know what you'll learn doing that job that will help you get your next better job. So part of the administrative assistant, my first job as an admin assistant, was we were moving offices. Our law firm was moving from one office location to another. So part of that was because they acted as a registered office for corporate clients. We had to therefore file a change of address with corporate registries. So I knew absolutely nothing about corporate law. I had absolutely no background in law. So, but I was, okay, I'll type out these notices and have them signed. And then I never filed them. I wasn't credited to file them. So I arranged to have them filed, but it kind of sparked this, hey, what is this registered office? And we're moving binders of minute books. And I'm like, what is a minute book? So exactly. And so I was asking a lawyer, I'm like, what's this all about? So he said, hey, do you want to take just a course at a local community college on corporate law, just the basics on corporate law? And I said, well, I don't want to be a legal assistant. He goes, no, we'll endorse you to take just that course. So I did, and I found it so interesting. So they, so that kind of sparked that interest in me. I learned more about it. And so out of my own pocket, I signed up to take the course level 1 with Alberta Registries, because here in Alberta, corporate filings are done at registries, and it's privatized. So I could get accredited. So I got my level 1 accreditation, so I could file basic notices. So now that I had this, it's like, wow, I'm now elevated from an admin, just an admin assistant making minimum wage, to now having this skill that is sought after, because you can go up to level 3. I had my level 1. So I could sign up for my level 2. And I did that. And I started looking for another job.
And then you had these credentials.
Because and then I got a headhunter, and she got me in. She got me an interview with a larger firm, because the reason why I was looking for another job is the firm that I was at, it was small. They didn't have a need for a full-time corporate person. So that's why I started looking for an opportunity elsewhere to continue growing this interest and experience, because I felt that this is a field that I can do until I retire. So I went to a larger firm, and again, serendipity, showing initiative, and finding the right person to listen to you and believe in you. I had no real experience myself, but I convinced the manager of the corporate department to take a chance on me. I said, listen, I'm already signed up to do my level 2 out of my own pocket. I'm that interested in this field that I've even signed up for my level 3 to take it immediately after the level 2 exam, even though I wasn't guaranteed that I passed the level 2. So she saw that I had the initiative and drive, and I really wanted to learn. And she said, well, I have another lady in my department. She's younger than you. Are you going to have an issue taking direction from a younger person? I said, absolutely not. If that person has no problem training me and mentoring me, I would gladly accept that opportunity, like with open arms, like, please teach me. I want to absorb as much as I can and learn about this field as much as I can. And so she did. So since then, that was my big break.
And you went on to level 3.
Yes, I passed the level 3. That is the highest accreditation for a corporate paralegal. And I mean, even if you have the level 3, it's just basically you can file anything with corporate registry. Up to amalgamations with but it's not just the filing with the registries, but also I write a lot of resolutions and I prepare documents. So if you go, what does a corporate paralegal do? Well, basically we shuffle paper and we generate a lot of documents and we file them. But it's a very, very challenging and rewarding job, I would find. So as you just to get back to your question, what were the skills experiences that led to that? It's just a culmination. Everything that I said, like cultivate interpersonal skills, like like learn, be curious, learn, and then accept the opportunity. Just and then the writing. The writing is a big part of that. And I don't know. It's just
I think there are like many skill sets and qualities that we've mentioned. We can talk about like qualities and that more innate to a person. And you talked about the initiative, of course, the willingness to learn. So that's really like innate to a person. And then the other, of course, is developing that particular skill set, whether it was the writing skills, the interpersonal skills, the communication skills, and eventually a more technical skill, as you said, if it's like corporate paralegal of the filings. So both are complementary. So in the end, after having gone through like this process from like the field of study to having this experience in broadcasting and eventually going into corporate paralegal, so what then can you say about decision making and the impact that a young person should consider when they're making this decision at this point in their life? What fields of studies should I take and what kind of careers should I be looking at?
The decision making?
Yes, because now they might be at this certain age of their life when they actually should decide or they're towards a decision about what they will eventually be studying. So that's kind of crucial, correct? Because it might be the first step. And from that, then of course, eventually they may also have an idea about, I might be good in this kind of career eventually. Yeah.
Well, so in terms of making a decision, I would like make a list of your strengths and your interests.
Yes.
Because there's a balance of like, well, these are my passions, but I mean, at the end of the day, you also want to have a paycheck, right? People have to live. So, but it's just, I wouldn't want to say, hey, just follow your dream, but then it's not giving you enough to live on either. So I would find a happy medium, find something that you enjoy, because seriously, if you hate your job or you're going to be miserable. You will spend more time at work and in the office. So if you're not happy there, it's just going to be a long day. So so definitely things that you enjoy and things that you have strengths in, but then also be open to things that you can, while you're not, you don't have the skills yet, but again, you can always learn those skills. And I would also
willingness to learn.
I'd also be mindful that you can always shift or you can always change. Like when I was 16, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So and even I personally, I have my older brother. He spent 4 years in electrical engineering before he
Yeah.
shifted to journalism. So
Okay.
again, so yes, it could be expensive, and it could be, your parents might go, oh my God, you just wasted time and money.
Yes,
But,
but
like,
but
but if, it's really, not for you, then yes, you might think that I wasted 4 years of my life, but why continue wasting more time? Like,
yes.
so again, so if you find that that's not what you want to do, and you find that, hey, this is what I want to do, because seriously, when you enter college at 16, I mean, 4 years later, you're 20. Most people in the world haven't figured things out yet at age 20. So
Mhm.
don't be stuck on that. Um,
Yes.
and whether it's in broadcasting, like I said, like, things have changed in the 20-30 years since I've been in broadcasting. You're no longer limited to AM radio, FM radio, and the 13 channels of TV.
Yes.
There's cable, and you know what, you're not even limited to being hired by someone. I mean, case in point, look at you, April. You set up your own, channel. Like, you're
Yes.
a content creator. So with the explosion of all these media platforms, heck,
Mhm.
you could do your own thing. Anybody out there, it's like, okay, I love broadcasting, but I can't get a job in it. Well, you know what? Be a content creator, set up your own channel, like, do
Yes.
your thing. And then, like, with the billions of people who now have access to you on the internet, you could have
Yes.
a following, and then you can get advertisers. Like I said, you can, it's amazing the opportunities out there, the
Mm.
the possibilities, if you're willing to take that chance.
Mm.
So again, so like, you could do this on the side. I mean, look at you, you're a lawyer and all these hats that you're wearing, and then you're doing this too. So for any youngster out there, it's like, well, I like this, and I'm sort of good at that, but I'm interested in this, but let's face it, I need to bring a paycheck home to my parents. So yeah,
Yeah.
okay, do that paycheck, earn that paycheck, but you could also do something on the side. At least, you're able to pursue your passion. And you'll find others out there in the world who share that same passion. At the very least, you'll find that you're being fulfilled because you're pursuing something that you love, even if you're not being paid for it, even if there's nobody who's there to appreciate what you're doing.
Yes. So I think very well said, as you're saying, the articulateness of being in broadcasting will now shine through. So I think for the very last part of our interview, maybe we will request you to do your closing spiel as you would on the night shift, if you
Oh my
remember it,
goodness.
before we end our program, because it's been such a pleasure, a very interesting conversation that we've had here. And
Oh,
I think that our viewers very much were passionate about their thoughts and beliefs. Maybe there's some sharing that actually took place during this session. So, Miss Anna Reyes Saro, please, to our
okay. Well,
viewers.
oh my goodness. This is how I would. Okay, so it's a radio romance time. Is now
Yes.
9:45. Thank you for
Mhm.
listening. This has been Anna. Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let those bedbugs bite.
Okay, so thank you so much to our guest, Miss Annalisa Reyes Saro, for the field of mass communications. It's been such a pleasure. So again, we'll see you next time, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're joined by Dr. Anna Clark. Her field is of English and creative writing. So please, can you give to our viewers, Dr. Anna, your greetings, please? They are our students, parents, educators, administrators, and stakeholders in the education sector.
Oh, I am so glad to be here with you today. It is an honor for me to talk about students and to greet students and to think about the career that I have had in helping students in their writing skills, their communication skills, their creative skills.
So I think we'll really have to start a little bit from the beginning. Maybe you can tell us what were your interests as a young person, and when and how did you decide to actually go into your field of study and career?
Oh, thank you for that question. I love to talk about my family and how my family encouraged me when I was growing up. I was a little girl who loved words,
Mhm.
always words around me, and
So
I
you were
loved
reading
people.
a lot?
Oh, I was reading a lot and I loved libraries. And we had a bookmobile that came to our little town in
Mm-hmm.
Missouri. And
Yes.
I thought some of the best people in the world were teachers and librarians and to be on a bookmobile.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I have a poem here that talks about my early interest. So
Yes.
may
So
I read it?
maybe you can tell us about your experiential learning and read the poem to us as an expression of what you experienced as a young person, please.
Oh, thank you. Um, this is the poem. And there was this little girl who loved people and dogs and cats and horses and family and snow. Yes, snow and the trees and flowers and words. She loved words, written words, spoken words, the sounds of dogs barking and cats purring, and her name being called, being spoken by friends. And this little girl didn't know yet about death. She did not know that her Skippy, that dog by her side, would one day not touch her with his nose. She did not know that the father who loved her and typed her poems and stories on his portable typewriter would one day type no more. She did not know. She did not know that one day her dear mother would not be there when she called. She did not know yet about darkness and death or wars, but somehow she knew. She realized without realizing that she must take in everything she could, all that beauty, even in the bare branches and snow.
Thank you so much for that wonderful poetry reading. So, now that you've told us a little bit about your experience as a young person, what then of the skills and competencies do you think that young people should develop should they wish to be in your field?
Yes. And again, thank you for that question. I think that young people need to keep an open mind and to explore. And when I was teaching here for 36 years at the University of Tennessee at Martin, every class, every student in every class, I would say to them, I'm a part, this class is a part of your journey. So open, take as much from this class, take as much from me as you possibly can, and let those skills help you on your journey. So I would say, keep an open mind, explore. Be passionate, love what you're doing. You may have to take geology, but
Yes.
maybe in geology, maybe you will find a passion for rocks. Okay. And you'll come to our Grand Canyon and take a hike in our
Yes.
Grand Canyon. Okay. But whatever, keep an open mind,
Mhm.
keep passionate, follow your heart.
So you mentioned about your career in education as a teacher. So what sort of career trajectory did you actually take and when did you decide you wanted to be in the academic community?
Okay. I wanted to prepare myself. Work was very important for me. I
Mhm.
knew that I was going to be working all my life. I
Yes.
wanted to work. That work ethic was set early on.
Mhm.
And I wanted to prepare myself. So anywhere I went in the United States, and I just thought of the United States at that time, not the world,
Yes.
but that anywhere I went, I could work. So, and I love teachers, so I thought teaching would be one, but I also want to prepare for newspaper work, journalism, public relations. And so my work that helped pay for my English education for my
Yes.
degree
Yes.
was really through journalism and photography.
I
And
see.
then, so I knew that when I moved from Missouri to Iowa and then to Mississippi,
Mhm.
that whatever, if a teaching job opened, that's what I wanted. But if not, it was going to be newspaper or public relations.
Yes.
So I prepared for a long career.
Yeah. So, and finally, because the students and maybe even the parents who are listening to us right now, what kind of advice can you give to them if they're on the cusp of making a decision, whether in the field of study that they will eventually pursue or in the career that will be undertaken by them in the future?
Again, I would say follow your heart, follow your passion. And if you want to do English, English can open up the world to you. Because you can teach, if you get that degree in English, you can teach, almost anywhere in the world too. We have friends who, have taught in Japan and in Korea and
The
in
world wants to learn English.
Yes, 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 yes. They want to because it's the language of business, and that's what that's what they say. And of the airlines also,
Yes.
you're speaking English. So yes, that is a wonderful major. Anything with English, with communications, where you can reach out and help people, that would be good.
Yes.
So
So maybe you can give some parting words now to our viewers before we end our interview, Dr. Anna.
yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Parents, keep encouraging your students in whatever field, your children in whatever field that they want. Give them exposure, experiences, and chances to be creative and find where their journey leads and support them on that journey.
Thank you so much, and we'll be right back. To our viewers, again, this is Amihan April Alcazar, PhD, and we're joined here by Dr. Harriet Spiegel of the College of Education of University of Tennessee, Martin. So we'll be discussing some very interesting aspects of education for today. So can you please give greetings to our viewers, Professor Harriet?
Well, good morning or afternoon, evening, whatever it is, to all of you, and thank you for this opportunity to talk to you.
Yeah, so I'm so happy that you'll be able to join us today. So I really wanted to find out your interest when you were a young person. When and how did you actually decide, if ever, you wanted to be a teacher or a professor?
The truth is, I grew up in Medellin, Colombia, in Latin America. So
Really?
my impression of the world was universal. It's a big world out there. There are a lot of people. But it was later in life when I actually went into a career of teaching. But as a child, I used to teach all my dolls. I would arrange them in a line and I would teach them something. I forget what it was. But I always did like explaining things.
Mm-hmm.
So later in life, I went into a different life stage. And I encourage all young people to find something they like to do when they're young.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's volunteer work, you can help with summer camps or tutoring younger children. That's a wonderful basis for a future career in teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I also developed an interest in helping people with disabilities. I've had a deaf ear all my life. And later, I heard a screen reader reading out an inaccessible web page to a blind student who was in my educational technology class that I was teaching. That motivated me to research digital accessibility for my dissertation. And digital accessibility is a sub-interest of mine. And this is what I went to Canada on a Fulbright last term with.
Yes.
I now teach full-time in educational studies, teaching students who will be or are already teaching. I was fortunate to be awarded the Fulbright. I mentioned that. And I am also the instructor of record for the graduate TESOL, Teaching English as a Second Language, courses to practicing teachers.
Yeah, so you mentioned about digital technology, and this is really the zeitgeist. This is the call of the times for us, especially because of wanting to reach basically the world through virtual technology. So what do you think are the skills and proficiencies that our current generation of students and learners should be developing if they want to be in your field of study?
Well, I will certainly echo your comments about technology. It's here to stay no matter how you feel about it. So people have got to know how to use computers and how to do it efficiently and accessibly
Yes.
and effectively. But my favorite part of teaching is the reflection exercises that the students frequently complete. It is encouraging to see the thought that so many students put into their studies. I believe that young people should be encouraged to develop strong reflective qualities that will help them in future decision making.
Yes, you mentioned about even growing up in Colombia, which is, of course, South America and not in the United States. So, how did eventually your career trajectory play out in terms of like the world view or perspective beyond that of the United States?
Oh, well, first of all, the worldview. It's something you can't just make up overnight.
Yes,
I grew up
definitely.
with that. But it has been interesting to me that through the years, my Spanish and this worldview have basically come to rest right now with the ESL is so important in our schools.
Yes.
Spanish is so important in our schools, so that it's all sort of come together. And I thought I've been fascinated by that aspect of it.
And also because of the commonality for the objective of the Fulbright Scholarship, the understanding between the peoples of the United States and also the peoples of the world. What can you say? Because now is the 75th anniversary of the Fulbright Scholarship worldwide.
Well, I was always interested. I knew people who were Fulbrights. I thought someday I'll do this. So I just did it. And I really believe I had a passion for what I wanted to do, which was exploring digital accessibility. And also, I happen to write well. I'm very grateful for my education. So I encourage anybody who is interested in learning about the rest of the world, just go up and look at all the information. There are many different levels of the Fulbright that in fact, they've got one for students. I mean, they've got
Definitely.
all levels of students. So I encourage everybody just to look.
Yes. So, as an exemplar of an educator who is a lifelong learner, what advice can you give to the young people who are on the cusp of either deciding what field of study they're going to pursue or undertaking the start or beginning of their career?
Okay. And I'm checking my notes because if I don't follow my notes, I'm off in outer space.
Yes.
So young people should be encouraged to find out as much as they can about what interests them. It is okay to try one thing and change your mind later.
Yes,
It isn't.
definitely.
It's the important thing is to do something you love, and then nothing will get in the way of your career pursuit. And that is harder for some than others.
Yes. So finally, of course, because we are discussing about the field of education, Dr. Harriet, what few words can you give now to our viewers as parting words so that they can take away from what we are discussing for today?
What I really try to tell every young person that will listen to me is to follow your own heart, follow your own mind. You know, when you make decisions, they're going to last a long time.
Yes.
So that would be the one thing I would do if I could do is teach younger people to consider their decisions and realize that their whole life depends on the decisions they make.
It's been such a pleasure, Dr. Harriet Spiegel. Thank you so much for your valuable time, and we wish you the best in all of your studies and, of course, teaching.